completely full. Once the show started, the audience was very quiet, perhaps sensing they were part of something special. Now, let's start the recording. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Joe Williams to the stage. There was a loud round of applause. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to support your station. We really appreciate it. You're welcome, Mr. Williams. Just so everyone knows, all ticket sales for tonight are going to our station. Also, Mr. Williams has signed and donated 500 copies of his book to be given as prizes in our fall fundraising drive. Thank you, Mr. Williams. The audience clapped again. It's my pleasure. I have supported NPR for many years, and I'm glad to help a bit more during these tough times. And Barbara, please call me Joe. She smiled, pleased with how things were going. Thanks, Joe. So, have you always been a writer? Besides your best-selling novel, do you have any more stories out there waiting to be found? He smiled briefly. No, this is my only novel. I work as a mechanical engineer, but I've been writing for the last 20 years. Part of my job was to create and revise manuals for our clients. So, if you've ever read the Operating and Troubleshooting Guide for the Intertech Hot Glue Labeler 6500, you've seen my work. The crowd chuckled appreciatively. That explains your writing style. Many of us know your book and its story, but could you share a bit about it for our radio listeners? Joe sighed slightly and replied, Sure. It's been over 3 years since it all happened, and 15 months since I finished the book, so I've learned to cope. He turned to look at the audience and took the microphone from the stand, walking to the front of the stage. Look at me. What do you see? Just an average person. And do you know why? Because I'm as ordinary as meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I'm 5'10", which is average height. I weigh about 170 pounds, not heavy but not fit either, just average. I have brown eyes and mostly gray hair, also average. If you saw me on the street, you wouldn't be alarmed, but you'd probably forget me as soon as you walked by. He returned to his stool and placed the microphone back in the stand. I didn't mind being average. I was just a regular 50-year-old man living in a nice but ordinary middle-class home in a mid-sized town. And I was content with that. However, I did stand out in some important ways. One was my wife of 27 years. I thought she was truly exceptional in both looks and intelligence. Then there was my only child, a daughter, who was a younger version of her mother. At 24, she had a new husband whom any father would be proud to call a son-in-law. Lastly, I had my job. I had worked for the same company for 28 years, my first and only real job. I felt like I had it all, living the dream life. So what went wrong? Well, the economy crashed, my office shut down, and we lost jobs. I could have transferred across the country, but my ties were here. The severance package was generous, so I had some support. Plus, if I didn't find something soon, I could apply for unemployment for a while. Then my son-in-law lost his job, too. He and my daughter were just starting out, and since she was 6 months pregnant, they couldn't afford to lose their health insurance. They had to move away. Joe paused to take a sip of water, then he spoke in a low, emotional voice. Then something completely unexpected and heart-wrenching happened. My wife, the only person I had ever truly loved, left me. Not just that, she left the country, leaving a 2-page letter and a divorce request. In less than 3 months, 2 of the most important parts of my life, my job and my family, were taken from me. What a disappointment. The foreign companies have found a way to hurt us without a fight. They produce poor quality products and frustrate us. I had just thrown away a manual for some equipment our customer had bought for a new production line. It was written in a difficult language, not exactly Chinese, but the translation was nearly useless. We struggled through the manual and found confusing instructions, missing parts, and errors. I worked for Motion Inc., an engineering company that designed, installed, and upgraded production lines. The founder chose the name because, as any engineer knows, everything is about movement and flow. If there's a delay or a problem, you start losing money fast. Companies dislike that, so they hire us, and we have built a strong reputation. It was the early 1980s, and factories were starting to move to China. It wasn't just the loss of our jobs. The products we received back were often poorly made. They did improve over time, but that didn't help me then. I had been at the company for a little over 3 years. I was a good employee, received positive reviews, and was generally well-liked. Not one to show much emotion, my outburst surprised my boss, who happened to be walking by my office. He came in and sat down. "What's going on, Joe?" "It's this frustrating manual. I think whoever wrote it was completely out of touch." "I'm sorry for the outburst, but this thing is just not working." He shook his head. "You don't need to tell me. You should hear what the others are saying." He was stroking his chin, which meant he was thinking deeply. "Joe, one reason I have you do so much desk work is that you are much better at it than the others. Your reports are always clear and to the point. You don't push an agenda or try to make your role seem bigger than it is. You just present the facts. Let's have Ed handle the field work on this. I want you to rewrite this manual. I know you've already done half of it. Take 3 weeks and see what you can create." With that short conversation, my career took a new direction, and I became a technical writer for the next 24 years. For the next 3 weeks, I worked 50 to 60 hours a week on the manual. I had already done much of the work before our talk. I simplified it, cut out unnecessary parts, and added details where needed. It wasn't thrilling reading when I finished, but it was clear. I had 5 copies printed and left them on my boss's desk just before the weekend. Bill, my boss, came into my office the following Wednesday. "Great job, Joe. Ed said thanks. We want you out there on Monday for the test run. It should only take a couple of days." "That's good. I can spot any issues and make changes if necessary." The test run went well. We encountered some minor issues, but nothing major. I spoke with the operators and took notes. When I returned, I made revisions and included a troubleshooting guide for new operators. It was so well received that I wrote manuals for 2 other pieces of equipment. Ed and I spent another 3 days at the facility about 4 weeks later, ensuring small issues didn't turn into big problems. On my last day there, corporate officials were visiting to observe the operations. I was in a small conference room discussing some tweaks I thought would improve the system when something unexpected happened. The chief engineer for our client asked me if I was happy with my job. "Yes, I am. It's a good group to work with." "Why do you ask?" "We're impressed with your work. We have 11 plants and my team is a bit overwhelmed right now. We could use someone like you to help resolve issues. You would be based at the main office and travel to where you're needed. Interested? I believe we could make an appealing offer for you. Think about it for a few days and let us know. Thanks for your great work." The offer was very appealing, but it would mean relocating and a lot of travel. I had only been married for 2 years and I didn't like being away from my wife. She knew traveling would be part of my job when we got married, but this would require me to be away much more frequently and for longer periods. I decided not to take the job. I had been back in the office for a week when Bill came bursting in. His face showed he was upset. He closed my door behind him. "Joe, I thought you were happy here. Why didn't you tell me you were job hunting? Was it for more money or better benefits? Where's your loyalty? What did they offer you?" His anger caught me off guard. "I didn't look for another job. They came to me. I do like it here. But tell me, Bill, is this the only job you've ever had? If I decide to change jobs, it will be for my family's sake. If I think a new job is better for us, I'll take it. What do you put first, Bill? Your family or your job?" I don't think he expected me to respond like that. He raised his hands. "Calm down, Joe. Of course, you should do what's best for your family. Just please discuss any offers with me first." I was still annoyed. "I'll keep you updated. Just so you know, the other offer was very tempting." Things felt tense over the next few weeks. Bill asked me to stop by his office on Friday before leaving. When I walked in, I was surprised when he closed the door. This usually meant trouble. The serious look on his face didn't reassure me. He handed me an envelope. "Read this." It was a letter from our main office congratulating us on our successful work. Inside was a bonus check for about 2 months' pay. Suddenly I saw Bill taking a picture with a camera. He smiled. "I wanted to capture this moment. Great job, Joe. The client has 11 factories, and this project was a test to see how the upgrades would go. They were so impressed that they signed a contract on Monday for upgrades on all their locations. They specifically praised your extra effort on the manuals. Now, take your wonderful wife out tonight to celebrate. Take Monday off, too. I know how much extra time you put in on this project. Think of it as time off. You'll have a visit from corporate HR on Tuesday, and it will be good news. Now go ahead, enjoy your long weekend." I felt thrilled as I left. Stopping at the bank to deposit the check, I decided to follow Bill's suggestion and do something nice for my wife. There was a new Italian restaurant she wanted to try, but it was expensive and had a long waiting list. I thought I might check if we could get in tonight. Luckily, they had just received a cancellation. I convinced the manager to give us a spot. To make the evening special, I picked up a nice bouquet for Annie when I got home. "What are these for?" she asked, surprised and happy. "For no special reason, just because I love you and had a wonderful day. It's too great to have you cook. Let's eat out tonight." "Sweetie, please wear something nice tonight, okay?" As many women know, when unsure, go for the classic choice. A simple black dress works for any event. She chose one of my favorites, fitting her nicely and ending just above her knees. Her eyes widened when we arrived at the parking lot. "There's no way we'll get a table. We've tried before, and it was always at least 3 weeks. Trust me, dear. Maybe I've been planning this for a while. Who knows? We might get lucky and find a last-minute spot. Let's give it a try." Her worries melted away when I gave our name and we were shown to our table. She looked at the menu and gasped, "Wow, these prices are high. Can we afford this?" "Don't worry, tonight we can. I got some good news at work today. Let's enjoy our dinner and I'll share it with you afterward." She relaxed and smiled at me, a happy secret in her eyes. "Okay, I have something good to share too. But first, I really want to try calamari." The meal was one of the best I've had. The atmosphere, being together, and the happy mood are memories I cherish. Oddly, Annie turned down wine. She usually preferred wine over beer or liquor, but said she wouldn't drink tonight, which should have been a hint, but sometimes men just don't notice. Sipping coffee and enjoying dessert, I shared how I had been rewriting manuals at work and how happy everyone was with the results. I talked about the job offer I was expecting, my upcoming interview with HR, and how I felt a nice raise was in my future. She was thrilled. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve it. I always thought they didn't appreciate your work." "That's great to hear. I did some shopping today after my doctor visit. I didn't realize how pricey nursery items could be." "Nursery items?" "Yes, nursery items. We need to prepare soon, only about 7 months left to get everything ready, and in another 4, I might not be very helpful." I looked a little puzzled, but she just smiled. "Joe, don't you understand? We're expecting a baby. About 2 months along, according to Dr. Roberts. Aren't you happy?" We had been trying for 9 months, so was I happy? I did what any man would do and started to cry. I went around the table, knelt down and hugged her gently, as if she were something very delicate. She laughed and hugged me back. "Come on, give me a real hug, I won't break." People around us noticed. "Engaged?" asked an older couple at the next table. "No, we're expecting our first child," Annie proudly replied. The woman stood up, came over, and gave Annie a warm hug while her husband shook my hand. "We're thrilled for you. Congratulations. Cherish this moment and just wait until you have grandchildren. It only gets better." By that point, everyone in the restaurant seemed to know, and we thanked many who shared in our joy. It was a night we would always remember. The pregnancy was tough. At 7.5 months, she had to rest in bed, and by 8 months, she felt restless and irritable. Labor went on for 21 hours. After our daughter, Amber June, was born, the doctors called me into a room. "Mr. Williams, we need to inform you that we've found some issues with your wife's health. Right now, it is not life-threatening, but if she were to get pregnant again, it could be very risky for her. She might not be able to go the full term. Please talk to her about this. If she wants, we can perform a procedure while she is still here. You could also choose to have a procedure for yourself. Consider this, as it might be easier than other forms of birth control which can fail. Think it over." Annie was heartbroken. She grew up as an only child and dreamed of having at least 4 kids. I suggested adoption, but she felt it was too soon to discuss. I gave her the choice, and she decided that since she was already in the hospital and in pain, a little more wouldn't make much difference. The next day, she had the procedure done. She was very sad and cried on and off for about a month. The only thing that brought her joy was our daughter. No matter how she felt when I handed Amber to her, she would start to smile. When Amber was 3, I brought up adoption again. Annie quickly said no. I asked again when Amber was 6, 8, and 11, but each time I was firmly told no. Eventually I stopped asking. I got a nice raise and rarely went out for work more than overnight. Over the years, the workload increased and they hired more people until I realized I was in charge of a whole department. I was now in middle management. Our reputation grew. If there was a problem with a manual, we would create a new one. Oddly, I found myself spending more time in the field, mostly checking things and making updates, with some minor troubleshooting. Annie was doing well herself. She moved up from being a receptionist at a dental office to office manager. Her work hours became more regular, so she took on the main caregiving role. I preferred to stay home with my family whenever possible. Travel became the reason for our separation. Annie loved to explore new places. I enjoyed being home more than traveling. She would start planning our next vacation before we returned from the last one. As soon as Amber became a teenager, Annie included her in the planning, even allowing her to choose a destination now and then. We went to beaches, went skiing, rode a mule into the Grand Canyon, and spent a week sightseeing in Washington. A major project at work came up that required 3 offices to work together to meet the schedule. I was honored to be made the coordinator. Unfortunately, this meant I had to travel much more, falling into a routine of 1 week away and 1 week at home. AJ was 15 and had her own friends and activities, so Annie often felt alone. She was frustrated and lonely. I noticed it but didn't know how to help her feel better. One night, a group of us talked about this in the hotel lounge. A man from another office shared that he was separated from his wife. He mentioned that she was upset he traveled too much and left her alone. He complained that if she was frustrated by his absence, then being apart completely didn't seem better for their relationship. An older man chimed in, "You should get a good lawyer now. It sounds like she's not coming back. Sorry about that." Another guy asked, "You travel just like the rest of us. Didn't you just celebrate your 30th anniversary? What's your secret to staying married?" Actually, it's the 35th. The trick is to make sure she doesn't get bored. We have 5 kids, and I always have to count how many grandchildren I have when I brag about them. I'm lucky because when she gets bored, she can spend time with one of our kids. Plus, she has her quilting club, book club, and dance classes. She keeps busy and happy. It helps to treat her like the special person she is when you're home. Sure, there are times I'd rather do something else, but nothing is as important as her. That's why I take dance lessons. I want to enjoy the dances with her for the rest of my life. That made a lot of sense. But we didn't have a big family, and she already knew how to dance. I needed to find something else she loved and support her with it. Then it came to me. Travel. It was her favorite thing. I looked into it and found a lot of travel companies. 2 nearby offered short trips that lasted 2 or 3 days. I found a 3-day trip that caught my attention. It was from Friday morning to Sunday evening and included a visit to the Biltmore House in North Carolina, known as the largest home in America. Jamie had always wanted to see it. The trip included a visit to the home of author Thomas Wolfe and some shopping at a local outlet mall. It was the perfect getaway for her. Best of all, it happened during a weekend when I would be away, so I would come home around the same time the tour ended. I booked 2 tickets which would be delivered to my office. I planned a little, talked quietly to her bosses to ensure she could take that Friday off, and I felt ready. I didn't tell Annie when I left that Monday. AJ was supposed to share the news just before I called her on Thursday night. It turned out beautifully. When Annie came home from work, she found AJ packing a small suitcase. "What are you doing?" Annie asked. AJ gave her mom a look only a teenage girl can pull off. "I'm packing." "Let me rephrase that," Annie said. "Why are you packing?" "Mom, maybe I'm packing because I'm going somewhere." "Where do you think you're going?" "Never mind, forget the questions. What's happening?" Just then, the phone rang. AJ looked at Jamie and said, "I think it's for you." "Hello?" "Hi, sweetie, I miss you too. Did you let AJ go somewhere? What, 3 days? What's going on?" "No, I'm not losing my mind. I just wanted to remind you to take a raincoat." "Why?" "Because it's supposed to rain this weekend." "No, not where you are, but in Asheville." "Why does that matter?" "Because that's where you're going, to the Biltmore House and then to the big outlet mall. I know you don't like staying home alone, so AJ and I planned this trip. She will help keep an eye on you, but I trust you everywhere except the outlet mall." Then again, 2 women with credit cards at an outlet mall might not be the smartest idea. Please take it easy, okay? Love me still? I could hear AJ chuckling in the background. "Love you?" If I could, I would send you a big hug through this phone, but since I can't, I'm going to have AJ pack an extra outfit and drop her at Grandma's house on Sunday. I plan to show you how thankful I am." AJ laughed loudly in the background. "Mom, that's too much for a teenager. Tell Dad we both love him and start packing." She did just that. The trip was a big hit. She was just as excited when she got home as when she left. She spent about 2 hours telling me everything. What she saw, the people she met, the meals they had, and all the shopping. That made me wonder if I made a mistake. She kept pulling bags out of the trunk. Most of it was for AJ, clothes and shoes for school. She said she found great deals, so I let it slide. Then she pulled out one more bag. "I got you a little something. They had a really cute shop. I'm going to take a shower. Please don't come into the bedroom until I call you. If I remember correctly, I have something nice to show you." Those 45 minutes felt like the longest ever. But when she called me, it was worth it. She had a lovely outfit on, complete with accessories. She looked beautiful. "Would you like to see your gift?" "I almost don't want to. It's such a nice surprise." "We'll find a middle ground. I'll leave on one of the accessories." I didn't get much done the next day at work. All I managed to do was arrange for a box of his favorite cigars to be sent to Will, the engineer whose suggestion started everything. This led to a routine of trips, usually once a month. If it was somewhere AJ wanted to go, Annie would go alone. She wasn't truly alone. She made friends with several women her age who liked to join her on these trips. Often, one or more of her friends would be on the same bus. We almost ran out of space saving all the pictures. AJ, like all kids, grew up fast. One minute we were looking at college brochures, and the next we were waving goodbye as she entered her dorm. Annie took it hard. I was still traveling, though not as often, at least once a month. About every other month she would visit AJ or explore a new destination. She seemed distant and withdrawn. Where she used to greet me with a warm hug and kiss, it changed to just a quick peck on the cheek. Our moments of closeness became less frequent, and our intimacy almost vanished. It got to the point where I felt we needed to talk about it. She confessed that she missed having AJ around, especially when I was away. She felt lonely, bored, and useless. I was shocked. As much as I loved our child, I was looking forward to spending time alone with Annie. I had hoped that the passion from our younger days would come back. "Honey, I love you more than anything. You're seeing things the wrong way. This isn't the end. It's a new start. Think about all the things you've wanted to do but couldn't while taking care of AJ. Now you can. You've always liked art. Doesn't the local college have classes? You've also shown interest in pottery. Why not try it? Don't dwell on what's past. Focus on moving forward. You have so much life ahead of you, ahead of us, to just sit still. Take a step forward, honey, before the past holds you back." I became more passionate as I spoke, nearly raising my voice at the end. She looked surprised, but then smiled. "Thanks, honey. That push was just what I needed. I love you." Then she smiled knowingly. "You know, there are some things I've always wanted to try, but I need to get ready first. But right now, I'm feeling a spark." "Interested?" It was a question I couldn't believe. I didn't realize it then, but it marked the start of a change. For about a year, things were wonderful, but then she slowly began distancing herself from me. She started taking art classes first at school, then privately because she said she preferred one-on-one instruction. She also began traveling more. Money was never a concern for us. After learning AJ would be our only child, we decided to keep our 2-bedroom house instead of upgrading. We didn't have to use the money from her college fund because she received a full scholarship. As she became the office manager, my work team kept growing, and my pay increased with my new duties. I also received nice bonuses that I saved. We both put the maximum into our 401 plans. Overall, we were very comfortable. Then the economy went downhill. Companies weren't hiring or expanding, so they didn't need our services. First, one branch closed, then another. We felt uneasy as rumors spread. Finally, it happened. We were downsized. A few of us, myself included, were offered transfers. My whole life was tied to this place, and as much as I would miss my job, I couldn't leave. They treated us well, and we received generous severance packages. Annie took the news harder than I did. "Are we going to be okay financially? Are there jobs out there?" she asked. "Don't worry. The severance package will cover my full salary for 6 months and will have health insurance until it runs out. By then, the economy should improve. If not, I can get unemployment benefits. Everything we have is paid off, so just relax, I reassured her. Still, she worried. I wanted to take a few weeks off to rest, but she urged me to send resumes to almost every nearby company. No one was hiring, and those that were could easily find fresh graduates for lower pay. Annie seemed more distracted each day. I sensed something was off, but chalked it up to the financial stress. She became short-tempered and took offense easily. She continued working and attending art lessons twice a week. Despite her worries, she took 2 trips. I offered to join her, but she laughed. This trip is to an expo on quilt making. Some quilts are beautiful. It's art made from fabrics instead of paint. Ramon says it will help with my composition and color skills, she explained. Ramon was her art teacher. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I thought she wasn't the best painter. The thought of spending 2 days looking at quilts, no matter how lovely, didn't interest me. Discussing fabrics and sewing machines didn't sound enjoyable, so I politely declined. By now, AJ had graduated, found a wonderful partner, and got married. Planning the wedding lifted Annie's spirits, but once it was over, she realized AJ was moved away for good. She was thrilled when AJ shared that she was expecting a baby. They lived less than an hour away, so Annie visited frequently. When Annie learned they had to move across the country, she fell into a deep sadness. She only perked up when she took 2 weeks to support AJ during the arrival of the baby. I arrived at the hospital with 2 hours to spare, and we were thrilled to be new grandparents to a baby boy. Once we got home, her mood returned to being quiet and sad. One night, I finally lost my temper and let it out. What's wrong? We're still young, and there is so much we can see and enjoy together. Yet nothing I suggest seems to interest you. It feels like I'm just in your way. Are you trying to push me away? She looked pale as I spoke, and her eyes widened at the last part. Instead of answering, she hurried out of the room. I could be just as stubborn as she was, so I decided to let her be. I packed for an overnight trip since I had started a new job and needed to meet a client. The argument began because I wanted her to come with me. A former client reached out, unhappy with the new management. He asked if I was interested in some freelance work because he had some problems in his production system that he wanted to fix. My plan was to fly in, observe things, make suggestions, and review his operator manuals. This was a great opportunity for me. I wouldn't have to travel often and could do most of the work from home. I even planned to turn AJ's old room into an office. We barely spoke to each other the rest of the night, and she seemed hesitant to say goodbye the next morning. I gave her an ultimatum, something I rarely did. When I return, we need to have a serious talk about our future. I'm not happy, and you're not happy either, and I don't understand why. Don't make any plans. I want the whole weekend to sort this out. When I got back, she was gone. On the kitchen table, there was a letter. Joe. Not Dear Joe, just Joe. By the time you read this, I will be gone. I've thought about this for a long time. I'm not happy, and I haven't been since AJ went to college. My life feels dull. The excitement we had has slowly disappeared, and you didn't even notice. I know you've tried to bring it back, but it was too little, too late. I know this message will hurt you, and I'm sure it's a shock. But I want to be happy again, and I can't find that with you. I've been involved with Ramon for about 2 years, and you had no idea. That shows how far apart we have grown. It was easy to hide because you trusted me completely. All the trips I took, even the one with the quilt, were with Ramon. You were my husband, but he is my true partner. Don't think I didn't feel bad. I spent many nights feeling upset about this. But in the end, I can't continue like this. I've already started the divorce process. The lawyer's card is on your desk. He will explain everything, but I've given him the authority to manage things and signed over the house. In return, I've taken half of the money from our savings and retirement account. You keep your 401, I keep mine. Please don't argue. This is as fair as I can make it. I left my job last week and took my retirement money. By the time you read this, I will be in Europe, mostly in Spain and Italy. Please don't try to contact me except through my lawyer. I know this seems like a weak choice. I just couldn't face you. I'm sorry for that. Now you have to tell AJ, which feels like another unfair thing. Please don't look for me. I wouldn't speak to you if you did. I hope you remember the good times after the anger passes. You didn't deserve this. I will always think of you with love. Annie. The audience listened intently as Joe shared the story of his marriage's ups and downs. Barbara saw some women in the crowd with tears in their eyes. So there I was, starting what I thought would be a wonderful time in my life, suddenly alone. Was it painful? Yes, very much. Did I fall apart? To quote my grandfather, like a broken watch. Did I pick myself up? Kind of, it's still a work in progress. Barbara's voice on the radio brought people back to the moment. Mike listened closely through his earphones. As Barbara left, she gave him a knowing smile. He felt he might have made a mistake. The crowd was quiet as Joe talked about his wife leaving him. After a moment, Joe continued, I was completely heartbroken. I really was a clueless husband. I thought that if you loved someone deeply, you couldn't betray them. I was wrong. I sat at the kitchen table reading the note again. It was short, almost cold in how little it said. No long explanations, very little apology, just, I've moved on. Sorry, it's nobody's fault. I didn't understand it at all. I couldn't sleep that night. I just stared at the note. I didn't drink, didn't break anything, didn't shout. I just felt empty. The anger came later. I finally went to bed and slept a little. I woke up with a headache and called for Annie, asking where the medicine was. I saw the note again and felt the pain all over. In the next few days, I felt like a zombie. I went to her old office. They told me she had quit 3 weeks ago, probably spending those days with someone else to get ready for her trip. She took very little with her. Most of her clothes, her jewelry, including her engagement ring and wedding band, were left behind. No photos or mementos from our time together. It felt like she was gone. None of her friends knew she had left. Her only new address was her lawyer's office. It took me 2 weeks to find the courage to call AJ. At first, she couldn't believe me. Then she started to cry. She was so upset that her husband had to take over while I explained everything again. AJ finally calmed down enough to talk. She insisted that she wanted to come visit me for a few days. I talked her out of it because it would have messed up their vacation plans, and traveling with a baby across the country would be too hard. After that, she called me every day for 3 weeks just to check on me. She wanted me to send her the full goodbye letter by email. I didn't want to at first, but I eventually did. Her reaction surprised me. What happened to my mother? Who is this person who isn't caring anymore? When Bunny, her nickname for her daughter, asks if she has a grandmother, I will tell her that she passed away. I never want to speak to her again. I was taken aback by her anger. AJ, I know you're upset, but deep down, even if she seems distant, I believe she still loves you. There is a chance she might reach out someday. Please be open to that. She is your mother and the grandmother of your child. It's important not to judge her too harshly for what happened between us. A part of me felt relieved she still believed that, but I hoped she would at least talk to her mother if she got the chance. I went through all the feelings of loss, anger, denial, and sadness. I took some satisfaction in making things difficult for her lawyer. The longer I stretched it out, the more it would cost her. At first, I didn't want to talk to him and ignored anyone who knocked on the door. The process server traveled a lot just to find me before I stopped playing games. I even threw the papers in the trash in front of him. I told the lawyer I would only speak with him if I had my own lawyer, but I didn't hire anyone for about a month. Then, I scheduled a meeting but skipped it, alongside the next one. I asked for many records, both financial and other kinds. After 6 months, she sent me a handwritten note asking me to let it end. I told her lawyer that if she asked me in person, I might consider it. My own lawyer asked me if I was tired of spending money on this. Even he thought it was getting old. He was right. I was just going in circles. I did manage to have her cover some costs along the way. Most of my anger and pain faded to a dull feeling. It was still there, sharp at times when something triggered it, but mostly I was learning to move on. Fortunately, I was working again, which helped keep my mind off the pain. I had taken on a few jobs, getting work through recommendations. Then one day, my old boss called me. "Joe, what are you doing? We've lost 2 small customers to you, and in this economy, we can't afford that." "Well, Bill, they came to me. I didn't go after them. It's just minor work, but it keeps me busy. The job market here isn't great, as you know." Bill had accepted a transfer, though I knew he had been looking for a while before he moved. "Well, Joe, I'm offering you a deal. Come back to work for us," he said. We'll take you back at your old pay and seniority, and you can keep your health insurance. We'll send you assignments, mostly similar to what you're doing now. You'll need to travel a bit, but not every week. I don't know why we didn't think of this sooner. It's a good situation for everyone. I didn't agree right away. I still had about 3 weeks of work left on my current contract. But I told him I was very interested, as long as I could work at my own pace. He chuckled. That's the great thing about the internet. You can work at 3 in the morning if you want. Just meet the deadlines we set and it won't be a problem. When I finished my contract, I officially rejoined Motion Inc. 9 months passed. I wasn't back to where I used to be, and I wasn't sure I ever would be, but I could manage. I didn't even feel sorry for myself when the divorce was final. I still had my friends, and most were shocked by the news. Some, mainly the wives, thought there was something deeper behind it, probably something I did. It didn't bother me what they thought. One change was that after the divorce, I was often invited to parties or meals and found myself chatting with single women my age. I was polite and friendly, but I wasn't interested. I had spent my whole life loving one woman. I didn't know how to connect with anyone else. They quickly caught on. I looked at the calendar. It had been 1 year since she left. I had been doing okay, but I didn't want to be alone tonight. Harry's Bar and Grill was a popular spot. Everyone knew each other, and it was usually a pleasant place. Harry made sure nothing got out of hand. We had known each other for years and occasionally socialized as couples. His wife had some mobility challenges and used canes to walk. But her mind was sharp, and she could be very witty when she wanted. Harry cared for her deeply, and she often held court at a corner table while Harry managed the bar. They understood what I was going through, but after a while she told me straight up it was time to move on. She left you. It was cold, and she was wrong for doing that. But she did. Move on, she has. It was good advice, but I wasn't ready to hear it back then. Their bar was just 8 blocks from my house, and when I craved company or a good cheeseburger, I would walk over. I usually had tea or a beer. If I had too many, someone would give me a ride home, or I would call a cab. Tonight would probably be one of those nights. I ordered a cheeseburger and coffee, exchanged friendly greetings, caught up on local news, and shared congratulations for graduations, births, and marriages. Feeling sad about sickness, loss, and breakups. Just a regular Thursday night in a quiet neighborhood. I don't usually drink, but I had started to like Bock beer, especially one from a Texas brewer called Shiner. Harry gave me one for free, probably sensing I needed a pick-me-up. I had just begun my 3rd beer when a pretty woman came in and sat next to me. She greeted Harry and his wife by name. She was around my age, maybe younger. She looked over at me and nodded, so I raised my beer in response. Harry introduced us. Joe, this is Annie. She's married to my cousin. By the way, where is Chad? She sighed and said, He's at that training seminar they make him attend every year. He's been gone for 4 days. I was okay for the first 2 days, then bored, and now I miss him. I didn't want to be by myself tonight, so I came here. She noticed my reaction to her name and asked, Do I know you? I smiled, trying to be friendly. No, it's just that my wife was named Annie. She asked, I'm sorry, did she pass away? Not exactly. She went to Europe with her new partner. Annie winced. That sounds rough. I'm sorry to hear that. Thanks. I'm getting through it. In fact, today marks a year since she left. I didn't want to sit and sulk alone, so I came here. Harry might not be the most attractive, but it's better than staring at the walls. Annie smiled as Harry chimed in. Hey, I heard that. We chatted, and she was easy to talk to. Jane, Harry's wife, joined in with her comments now and then. It was the most fun I'd had in a long time. I had moments of sadness, but Annie and Jane would cheer me up with their laughter. Annie laughed at something I said about how clueless men can be with women. And then she said something that changed my perspective. You're right. Men don't always understand. You'd think one of you would be clever enough to write a guide on how to understand us. Jane added, Yeah, like simple things, like don't say the wrong things and pay attention. Why is that so hard for you guys? I stared at them, surprised by the idea. It was so simple, yet brilliant. It hit me I had spent my life taking complicated concepts and making them easy to understand. What if I wrote a handbook for understanding women? How difficult could it be? They looked at me, curious about what I was thinking. I said, You know, you're both right. What you don't know is that I've spent over 20 years writing manuals for different types of machines, often making them easier to understand. How about helping me write that guide? I bet no man truly understands this language. Could I get some help with translation? They looked at me like I was a bit strange and started speaking in a language I didn't understand. Then Annie laughed. I'll help you, but I won't share any top secrets, for safety reasons. Jane chimed in, more straightforward. I think it's a good idea. Now I can express my thoughts without worrying too much about feelings. When do you want to start? I was excited. For the first time in a year, I felt like I had a purpose. Not tonight. I've had too much to drink and probably won't remember much. How about lunch tomorrow at this place? My treat? Jane snickered. Thanks a lot. You're treating me at a place I've gone to every day for the last 15 years. Annie laughed and I smiled back. Okay, Jane, you pick, but let's make sure we can talk without interruptions. Perfect. I've been wanting to try that Japanese restaurant on 3rd Street. Is that okay? Anywhere is fine, as long as we can hear each other. How about you, Annie? Any place you want to go? Can't I just go with Jane? I thought for a moment. No. I'd prefer to do this just with one of you. It'll help me focus better. All right, I guess. Let's make a dinner here instead. It's close, and honestly, I don't want to explain anything to my husband if someone sees us. He wouldn't believe me anyway. I thanked them and asked Harry to call me a cab while I finished my drink. The ladies returned to Jane's table, chatting and glancing my way now and then. You're braver than me, Joe. Asking what a woman wants and needs is something I would avoid. Good luck. If I didn't know how determined you are, I would probably laugh this off. Are you sure about this adventure? Harry raised an eyebrow as he cleaned a glass. Yes, I really am. Maybe it will help me deal with my own past. And perhaps, I thought, it could help prevent someone else from going through a similar experience. I hardly slept that night, getting up a few times to jot down my thoughts. I felt excited about this adventure. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I would ask, which only made me more confused. Then I remembered what I had done before. If a machine wasn't working right, I would always ask the operator since they were the most familiar with it. That's what I would do here. The woman would be the operator, and her heart would be the machine. If I could get her to share how that worked, it would be easy to explain it to a new operator, a man. I arrived at the restaurant early, ready with a small recorder to help me keep track of the conversation without notes. Instead of Jane, Anne walked in. As she approached my table, I expressed my confusion. Where's Jane? Something came up, so I came instead. I spoke to my husband last night. He knows you a little through your work. Chad said I should come, order the priciest thing on the menu, and chat with you. He also wants to read your manual when it's done. We had our meal, chatting casually. Afterward, we ordered coffee and got to the main topic. I told her I planned to record our conversation, and she agreed. What do you want to know? She asked. I had thought about this carefully. Everything. How did your relationship begin? What did you expect back then and now? Did it turn out like you wanted? How do you both work to keep each other happy? Are you happy right now? Where do you think he can improve? Are there times when you know you're being unreasonable? Who makes peace after an argument? Do you make decisions together or separately? Do you accept it when he makes choices on his own? And does he accept it when you do? I took a breath after my questions. Wow, don't hesitate to ask the tough ones. Give me a moment to think. After sipping her coffee, she began to share slowly, gaining confidence as she spoke. She loved her husband and had never thought about being unfaithful. Their love wasn't instant. It grew over time with understanding and care. Did he make her upset? Often, but the feeling was mutual. They worked through their small issues to prevent bigger conflicts later. They had a few significant disagreements, but they never stayed upset for too long. She wished he could be more understanding, and he wished she would be a little more open. Sometimes it feels like we think differently, like I'm on one level and he's still figuring things out. He paused in his story to make another point. Everyone, I thought about this deeply. I didn't read any expert relationship books, as I wanted to keep my thoughts genuine, but her point came up in almost every conversation I had. It made me think, leading to a conclusion discussed in the final chapters of my book. Men and women often don't communicate the same way because they don't see things from the same angle. Men focus on the present, responding to what they see and hear. Women think about the future. It's in their nature. They tend to wait for what they want and take things literally. A woman's greatest source of attraction is her mind. I heard a comedian during a book signing who really nailed it. I wish I could recall his name to give him credit, but it went something like this. A young man falls in love with what he sees right in front of him. He thinks, "Wow, she's beautiful. She smiles brightly, and she looks amazing in that dress. She's exactly what I want." And he's right. Gentlemen, close your eyes and picture your wife. Now, if you've been married a long time, what do you see? I bet my book royalties you're still thinking about that girl in the sundress. A few of the men laughed. You know, women, especially young ones, look at a man and think, he seems kind, he would be a great dad. They may also think, if I could just help him dress better, we could really make a life together. It's just how they think about the future. Now, ladies, close your eyes and think of your husband. Do you see that young, scruffy guy, or do you see the man he has become? The mature, successful, loving father? I thought so. The women chuckled in agreement this time. There you have it. Men and women often don't understand each other because they process things differently. Let me give you a better example. I often listen to public radio. One time I heard a discussion on Science Friday about how men and women navigate directions differently. When a couple asks for directions, the woman usually listens carefully to all the steps. She'll remember, go to the white church and turn right, go 2 stoplights, then turn left, and the first building is on the right. The man, however, will focus on the first part, go to the white church and turn right, and then ask for directions again. The man thinks in the short term, while the woman thinks further along. She's looking at the bigger picture. And that's why I believe women are smarter than men. Does anyone disagree? He paused while laughter filled the room. I didn't think so. He continued his story. The conversation with Annie was eye-opening. What I learned was that many men don't really understand women. The discussion with Jane went in a different direction. I was married to someone else before Harry. He was really focused on himself and very confident, almost to the point of being arrogant. It was all about him, and our marriage didn't last long. I thought all men were the same, so I took a break from dating. But when I eventually started again, I didn't feel excited about anyone. Then I met Harry. It felt like a fairy tale, a real romance. I didn't think it was possible until then, and it was mutual. We grew together. He worked as a salesman and was very successful, but he had to travel a lot. I hated being apart, but I knew it was for our future. We wanted a home filled with children. Then I found out I had a muscle disease that runs in my family, which usually affects women more. I was heartbroken. I feared I would end up in a wheelchair before turning 60. I also decided I would never have children if I inherited this condition. I couldn't bear the thought of passing it on to a daughter. I had my bags ready before Harry returned from his trip. When he got home, I greeted him at the door and took him by the hand. I put all my heart into it, knowing it would be the last time. Afterward, we cuddled together. He was gently touching my hair and saying how lucky he felt to have me when I broke down. I shared my struggle with my health, my choice not to have children, and my plan to leave him so he could find someone else. He fell apart. My strong man, my protector, cried and pleaded with all his heart for me to stay. He said he could handle my health issue and didn't need kids, but he couldn't live without me. I had never felt so loved. I interrupted her. But you have kids. I've met the twins. They're almost adults now. She looked directly at me. This stays between us and Harry. We adopted the children when they were just 9 weeks old. They look a little like me because they are my cousin's kids. The parents died in an accident. The strange part is that since they are related, they might have the same health issues. I made sure I couldn't accidentally have any more children, but no one else wanted them, and Harry fell in love with them just as much as I did. It feels like we have a special connection. He knows when I'm feeling down, even when we're apart. I can sense a little ache in my head, and I know something is bothering him. I should mention that Harry and I loved to dance and even took part in a few competitions. When I couldn't dance anymore, he stopped too, saying he wouldn't dance with anyone else. My sister was getting married, so Harry started working out about 4 months before the wedding because he said he wanted to get in shape. At the wedding, he suddenly lifted me and carried me to the dance floor. For 6 minutes, he held me up as we moved together. That's why he was working out to gain the strength to do that. How do you measure love like that? I may not be the best person to talk about it, Joe. I think what we have is pretty rare. I agreed with her. She was right. So far, I had only talked to 2 women in happy, lasting relationships. I needed to gather more information. I thought about this a lot over the next few days. Did I really want to take this on? How many women should I talk to? How much time was I willing to spend? Would it be worth it in the end? In the end, I decided to go ahead mostly for my own satisfaction. I thought it would only stay on my computer. I wasn't really sure I had the confidence to share it. Now it was time to get started. I listened again to my recordings of Annie and Jane. They were both under 2 hours long. How many interviews should I do? 100 felt too few, but 1,000 seemed too many. I settled on a middle ground, 500. 500 at about 2 hours each would take roughly 6 months of work at 40 hours a week. I could not spend 40 hours a week on this, so I had no idea how long it might take. At the start, I made a few rules. I didn't expect to see the same people again after our chats unless we happened to meet again by chance. I didn't want to prepare them first. I wanted to surprise them so they wouldn't have time to think about their answers. I hoped this would help me get more honest replies. That's why I wanted to talk to people I didn't know, with no plans for a relationship, and the belief that I would not meet them again. They might be more open that way. I discussed this with Anne and Jane. They agreed that talking to strangers was a good idea. I didn't need their names, but there were some details I wanted, so I made a small list. Age, relationship status. I knew that not all the women I would meet were currently in relationships, but many had been in one at some point. Race. I wanted to speak to a variety of people. Level of education, I was curious if educated people made similar choices as those who were not. Cultural background. Did the traditions they grew up with influence their relationships? Are you happy in your relationship? Is it what you wanted? Anne and Jane liked most of my list and agreed to help me with my first interviews. After about 3 interviews, I noticed I needed to change my approach. Word had spread and the women had time to think and give answers they thought I wanted to hear. I only wanted the truth, but I got a cleaned-up version instead. Still, I learned something from each woman I spoke with. I had to get creative. I visited coffee shops, different bars, colleges, and churches. I even went to 2 retirement homes. I talked to women at places I visited for work while I was still working around 30 hours a week. This travel gave me plenty of chances to meet new people. I spoke to women in Boston, St. Louis, Detroit, smaller towns along the East Coast and by the Mississippi River. When I finished my research, I organized my notes. The youngest woman I interviewed was 17, and the oldest was 83. 322 women were between 40 and 65. 39 were 66 to 83. 129 were between 20 and 39, and 10 were between 17 and 19. 320 were white, 80 were Hispanic, 15 were Asian, 64 were black, 10 were Indian, 6 were Polynesian, and 5 were American Indian. Most were Christian, mostly from Methodist, Baptist, and Catholic backgrounds. There were 4 atheists, 10 agnostics, as well as Hindus, Buddhists, and 1 Japanese woman who followed Shinto beliefs. There was also 1 American Indian who practiced a traditional religion that involved using peyote. 2 were part of a group that practiced voodoo. 288 had been in past marriages or relationships, 16 identified as lesbians, 4 were in polygamous relationships, and 31 were from other countries. 6 were in unhealthy relationships, 5 were involved in alternative relationship styles, and 14 chose to remain single, 8 due to health issues, and 6 by choice. It was interesting that 27 identified as bisexual. 58 believed their relationships would not last 6 months. 70 were very unhappy but wanted to do everything they could to avoid breaking up. 48 were not in any relationships at the time. Of those, 33 said they were not looking to start one soon. Joe paused to take a drink of water. If you think this is confusing now, you should have seen what I went through. Most interviews lasted about 2 hours. The shortest one was 16 minutes, and the person spent the whole time crying. One interview went on for over 4 hours because the person was so engaging that I lost track of time. To keep my research safe, I took a picture if they agreed. Instead of remembering names, I gave them my card with my email and wrote their number on it. I decided to call them all Annie as a joke and to remind myself why I was doing this. So when I gave out my card, I would write Annie 20 or Annie 200, depending on where I was in my research. I asked them to use their number when contacting me so I could match messages with faces. That's how the title came about. It took me 14 months to finish the interviews and 6 more months to organize the information into something clear, all while working 20 to 30 hours a week. The project took over my life. I always kept my professionalism intact and did my job well, but it became less important compared to my research. It got so intense that Jane, Chad, and Annie would come by every couple of weeks to take me out to socialize. Chad and Annie developed a friendship strong enough for dinners and visits. They wanted to keep me connected to the outside world. Chad often teased that I was a bit obsessed with my work, but joked that I could become a relationship coach for men once it was all done. I had long decided not to publish my findings. It felt more like a healing process for me, a way to cope with my feelings of being left behind. I thought only Annie, Chad, Jane, and Harry would read it, but fate had other plans. Motion Inc. used an editing service to make our manuals clearer. My work usually needed little change since I was experienced. It was mostly proofreading rather than heavy editing. But everyone makes mistakes, and I would occasionally slip up. I had been working on a large project and was finally ready to send it off. I was feeling worn out after spending about 40 hours doing interviews and writing notes over the past 9 days, all while juggling my regular job. The only reason I could give was tiredness. 2 days later, the editing service called me. John had been my contact for 11 years. We talked enough to become friendly, but we had never met in person. That was about to change. Joe, this is fantastic. I never knew you had this in you. Can I please edit it? John, it's just a manual. It's not even for a difficult piece of equipment. You could edit it easily. Are you joking? The most complicated thing is understanding how women think. Getting a peek into that is special. I started to feel uneasy. What are you talking about? Your book, of course. I already edited the first 4 chapters. My company is eager to see the rest. You know we publish nonfiction, biographies, history books, and how-to guides. They're looking to expand, and your work would fit perfectly. It's finished, right? I had been so tired when I sent out my manual that I accidentally included the first 8 chapters of my book. It seemed the secret was out. John, I wrote that to help myself. I never meant for it to be published. You're joking, right? My boss is going to call you soon. He wants to start talks about the book today. You should find an agent and a good lawyer. Just so you know, don't take the first offer. Mention you're considering other publishers. It might help you get a better deal. And remember, you want me as your editor. Please. Joe paused, his voice sounding a bit worn. Babs could see he needed a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a few minutes to stretch, grab some water, and get comfortable. When we return, I'd like Joe to share some of his favorite interview moments. 10 minutes later, everyone was back in their seats. The stage crew had filled up the water bottles, and Joe took the microphone again. All the interviews were special, but a few stand out to me. Annie, 337, lived in a retirement home. She was 74, but looked much younger. I can still picture her face. You're really 74? Yes, I am. I've had some work done to look younger. I believe I still look good for my age. Do you agree? I do. I thought you were younger. Are you seeing anyone now? Kind of. I'm spending time with 2 men regularly. One is 61, the other 67. I think they might be a bit too old for me, but they're nice company. They were both very good partners. So you're still enjoying life together? Yes, as much as I can. I've always had a strong desire for connection. I've been widowed twice. The best I can say about them is that they were both wonderful partners. Please understand, I was never someone who dated many people. I was always committed to my husbands, and I loved them both very much. My first husband was a banker. It was a respected job back then. I think he would be shocked to see how things have changed in that field. Our relationship was traditional. I took care of the home while he worked. It was the early 60s, after all. But he respected me. He knew I managed everything at home except for earning the money. I raised the children, kept the house in order, and acted appropriately in social settings. We had a classic family life. I would feel lonely sometimes when he was focused on his career, especially since he didn't like to travel, but we handled it together. We found joy in being close, and our feelings were strong until the end. We understood each other perfectly. He had a strong side beneath his formal appearance. I matched his passion, and we were truly connected. We only had one big argument, and it was about money. We had it, and he wanted me to spend time understanding our finances. I told him that as long as I had him, I wouldn't worry. I will never forget what he said. There may come a time when I'm not here. If that happens, I want you to grieve. But I don't want you to worry about the future while you do. This is for you and the kids, so please pay attention. So I did. I learned a lot about managing money, and he was very proud of me. Then one day I got a call from the bank. He had a heart attack at work. He was 57. I cried a lot and felt his loss deeply, but I moved on, and because of his planning, we were financially secure. We were married for 37 years, and I have no regrets. 5 years later, I met Paul, my second husband. He was an artist and a free spirit. While my first husband and I were more traditional, Paul was lively and unpredictable. Our relationship was full of spontaneity. He painted me, and that artwork is still displayed in my living room. While my first husband enjoyed his drinks, Paul chose not to drink. He wanted to have a clear mind. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't as financially stable as I was. Money was not a priority for him as long as he had enough to live. He wanted a prenuptial agreement to show that he was not interested in my money. I said no. We were happy together for 7 years. My kids eventually liked him, and the grandchildren adored him. The kids loved to come over and play dress-up, often painting their faces like animals from the zoo. 6 years ago, he lost his life because a distracted driver ran a stop sign and crashed into his motorcycle. When I think about it, the only thing those people had in common was their love for me. They never stopped reaching out, even when I chose not to listen. I don't think I'll ever marry again. It would take someone much younger to truly understand me, and that wouldn't be fair to him. I'm happy with the 2 people in my life right now. Overall, I've had a good life. As a side note, the older women I spoke to had been with their partners for over 40 years. I believe it was due to the way things were back then. Out of the 39 women I spoke to in that age range, from 66 to 83, 27, said they should have left their husbands. Annie was a beautiful black woman in her late 20s. This was one of the toughest interviews I ever conducted. Her husband was controlling, very jealous, and used drugs. She seemed trapped in a nightmare. The marks on her skin were visible even through her dark complexion. He had hurt her badly before, even forcing her out of their home in the cold. When she stood up for herself, he broke her arm. She tried to protect herself by getting a restraining order and filing charges, but didn't go to court. I asked her why she didn't leave. Because I love him and he loves me. And yet he hurts you. He doesn't mean it. I just know how to push his buttons. I felt a surge of frustration. Buttons. I once cared deeply for someone for nearly 30 years. She betrayed me and walked away without a word. I was angry, but I never thought about hurting her. I took a moment to collect myself. I'm sorry for snapping at you. It's just that if you stay with him, it's likely to get worse. He may feel love for you in a twisted way, but I have to ask, is your love enough to ignore the pain and shame? If you have kids, will he hurt them too? Is this the life you want? She hesitated, but then looked back at me with determination. It will change for the better. One day he will understand how much he has hurt me, and he'll change. I believe that. I knew she was trying to convince herself of something she didn't truly believe. There were many ups and downs during these interviews. I felt moments of intense joy and deep sadness. Sometimes I thought I was making progress in my search for understanding, but often I felt that no man could fully grasp what a woman experiences. Annie was the next to last person I spoke to, and she gave me hope for humanity. I was in a medium-sized town in Maryland for work. I was feeling optimistic about my progress, thinking this interview would be quick. I had checked out of my motel and was on my way out of town. It was lunchtime, and I passed a small restaurant that served crab cakes, a local favorite. A girl was standing by the road holding a sign. "Help me, I need a job." This caught my attention, so I walked over to her. "Any luck?" I asked, pointing at the sign. She sighed. "None. I don't know what to do. I've been to the job office, tried temp agencies, and applied to every place around here. Nobody wants to hire an 18-year-old with no experience." She gave a bright smile. "You're not hiring, are you, mister?" I felt sorry for her. "No, but I can buy you lunch if you agree to chat with me." She seemed a bit cautious. "I don't know, mister. You're not trying to take advantage of me, are you?" I smiled to put her at ease. "No, not at all. I'm actually a writer. I'm working on a book about relationships. Too bad you're not married." Her eyes lit up. "I am married for almost a year now." "Where's your ring?" She turned a bit red. "I don't have one. We couldn't afford it, but he plans to get me one soon." "Well, there you go. You're married, so you're a perfect candidate for our chat. I'm going inside now. Feel free to join me." I found a table by the window. She was still outside, holding the sign with a look of worry on her face. I called the waitress over. "Do you know that girl?" She looked outside. "Yeah, that's Wendy. Poor thing, things haven't gone well for her. Lucy lets her bus tables sometimes for a meal and a little money. She eats part of it and takes the rest back to the shelter for her husband." "Shelter?" "Yeah, they live in shelters. They're both foster kids and have had a rough life. I just wish things would get better for them." I handed her a $20 bill. "Could you please take her the biggest drink you have and tell her her meal is covered?" I took out another 20. "Please take this for your trouble." She looked at the money. "I can't take this for something I would probably do anyway." She tried to give it back, but I insisted. "Keep half and give her another meal when she needs it. You're a generous man. I'm sure she'll appreciate it." A few minutes later, she came back with a large drink for Wendy, who followed her in. Wendy walked straight to me and slipped into the booth. "Are you really a writer?" I nodded. "Have I read anything you've written?" "No, I doubt it. I'm a technical writer. I've been doing that for over 20 years. This is just a project I wanted to pursue." "How many women have you talked to so far?" 498? "No way. Really? How many more do you plan to talk to?" "You and one more. I'm aiming for 500. She relaxed and leaned back. "Okay, but I want a large crab cake plate with extra onion rings." "Deal." I shook hands with her and placed her order. Her story was really sad. Abandoned as a young child, she didn't know where her parents were or if they were still alive. She moved between foster homes and orphanages. Her basic needs were met and she was mostly treated kindly, but there was no love. She met her husband in a support group for troubled kids. She was 14 and he was 15. Her eyes sparkled as she remembered. We looked at each other and I just knew. This is who I wanted to be with. During the break, we shared a soda. We were both so shy, no one had taught us about love. But when we sat down, I chose to sit next to him, and I've been by his side ever since. He lived in a group home, while she had a foster family just 2 blocks away. He was in the home because he struggled with going to school, and his foster parents were worried about him, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. She told him that she had started attending the same school and didn't know anyone there. The next day, he was waiting on the sidewalk to walk her to school. He did this every day until he graduated. She felt so proud of him when he received his diploma. He was one of the student speakers, recognized for his progress. In his speech, he credited her for his success, saying the woman he loved made it possible. She cried so much during his speech that they almost asked her to leave the auditorium. One of his classmates' mothers recorded it and made her a copy. It was her most treasured item. We got married the day after I turned 18 at the courthouse. We picked up cans to pay for the license and the ceremony. A janitor signed as our witness. It was still the happiest day of my life. She blinked, as if something had gone into her eye. If I understand correctly, you live in a shelter now, is that right? Her eyes looked down. Yes, I don't have a job, and he does day labor. Some weeks he works a lot, and others not at all. What's hard is that we're on opposite sides. We don't have a place to stay together, and we're watched closely because of the rules. But at least you still get to say goodnight to him, I said, hoping to lighten the mood. If you aren't able to be together at night, how do you spend time together? I tried to ask gently. Oh, Sometimes we stay at a friend's apartment. I help clean it in exchange for time with my husband, and there's a park where we look at the stars while others watch out for, animals. I imagine the animals she mentioned were not the normal kinds. My heart went out to her. She showed me a small photo of her husband, a simple strip from a photo booth. He looked like an average guy, similar to me. Her face lit up when she talked about the children they hoped to have. 3, with no preference for boys or girls. She promised they would have a better life no matter what. Sometimes you meet strangers, and sometimes you meet friends. I could tell Wendy was going to be my friend. I called the company I recently left. Jerry, it's Joe. No, I didn't leave anything behind. A friend is in town and she and her husband really need a job. Yes, I can vouch for them. Hold on, I'll ask her. Wendy, how does $9.50 an hour sound? You would have thought I had made an amazing offer. She started crying and nodded yes. Jerry, she said that would work for her to start. What? Let me check. Wendy, does your husband know how to drive a forklift? Still crying, she nodded yes. Yes, he can. 11 an hour? That sounds good to start with. She'll come in to fill out the paperwork after lunch. Jerry, I really appreciate this. I owe you one, and I always pay my debts. Thanks again. She was so surprised she forgot to eat. I called the waitress over. I looked at her name tag. Sue, are you a good person? Can I trust you? She looked at me carefully. My husband thinks so, and yes, I'm trustworthy. Wendy was watching, puzzled by my questions. Wendy, stay right here. I need to talk to Sue for a moment. I stood up and walked to the counter. Sue came over after refilling some drinks. Sue, I think you're a good person. I need you to do something for me this afternoon. When do you get off? Do you need to go straight home? And I want you to do this for Wendy. Not for me. I get off right after lunch at 2. My husband won't be home until 6:30 and we're empty nesters. If I agree to help, is that enough time? Definitely, I assured her. Wendy has a job interview with Apex Consolidated. Do you know that place? She nodded. She'll get the job if she shows up. Look at her, she's neat and tidy, but her clothes are a bit worn, and one of her sneakers is torn. I want you to take her to Walmart, get her new clothes and shoes, and then take her to the interview. I'll pay for your gas and time. Will you help her? Why are you doing this? What do you get out of it? The good feeling that comes from helping someone, just because it's the right thing to do. I think she hasn't had much luck in her life, so let's give her a break. I don't know her. When I leave today, I'm going home and will probably never see her again. But I'll remember her for her hope and optimism in such tough times. It makes me believe that people can be good. So will you help? I think she had tears in her eyes when I finished. I took out all the cash I had, a little over $400, and gave it to Sue. Keep $100 for yourself and don't argue. Treat your husband, pay a bill, or save it for later. But I insist you keep it. Make sure she spends at least $200 on herself and the other $100 on her husband. Thank you in advance. I walked over to Wendy. Child, I hope you enjoy your meal. I must go now, but it was a real honor to meet you. I hope all your dreams come true. Please don't let me down with that job. I put in a good word for you, and I'll hear about it if things go wrong. I handed her my card with my number. Just as I reached my car, she grabbed me, hugged me tightly, and kissed my cheek. I rubbed my cheek absent-mindedly as I drove away. Allergies make everything harder. I could barely see the road. I finished my last interview and completed the book. John edited it wonderfully. The book was much better after his work. The publishing company used some clever tricks to attract new readers. They offered the first 3 chapters for free in their republishing section a month before the release date. If readers pre-ordered, they could get it 5 days early. Surprisingly, over 40,000 copies were pre-ordered. The publicists did a great job spreading the word. The rest is history. Babs jumped in at this point. She knew from earlier talks with Joe that he had a new woman in his life. She thought the audience would want to know he wasn't still sad about his late wife. So, Joe, your life must be very different now. Are you living like you did before? Have you gone all Hollywood on us and started dating famous people? His laughter was refreshing after his mostly serious talk. Yes, my life is different, but not in the way you might think. After the book came out, I went on promotional tours. There were book signings, talk shows, and personal events. I didn't date famous people. After my wife left, I wasn't eager to jump back into dating. I went out a few times and spent time with another author since we were both promoting our books. But it was just a friendship, nothing more. We're still good friends, and there are no hard feelings. I wasn't looking for love. Yet, as it often happens, when you aren't searching for something, it suddenly finds you. So, I take it you are in a relationship now? How did you meet? She already knew, and it was a great story. The audience would love it. I accidentally took her lunch. I was at the publisher's office to pick up my new schedule. If I had known how much work goes into promoting a book compared to writing it, I might not have started. In the last 8 months, I traveled to almost every major city in the northern part of the world. It was fun for a while, but I never enjoyed traveling much, so it became tiring quickly. But I was under contract, so I dealt with it. They provided me with a driver and a spacious Cadillac SUV. It was nice, but I thought it was too big for my liking. We were going out to lunch just to eat. Thankfully, it wasn't a meeting. I was walking past the employee lounge when a wonderful smell caught my attention. I surprised my driver by stepping inside. A woman was standing by the microwave. She had dark hair and a striking appearance that made me take notice. I later learned that she was 38 years old and stood 5'4" without her usual high heels. She had an energy about her that was hard to ignore. I was so taken aback by how she looked that I almost forgot why I came in. Thankfully, she was holding the plate that smelled so good. "What is that?" I asked, curious. "Meatloaf, Cuban style, mashed potatoes with garlic and green beans. It's my lunch," she replied. I think my offer surprised everyone in the room. "Not anymore. I'll give you $50 for that plate." "Are you serious? Go get your own lunch. I've only got 45 minutes, she said. "Okay, 100. For the first time, she glanced at my driver. He wasn't just a helper. The company kept a few cars and drivers around to watch over the writers. This way, they could keep track of us and make sure we stayed focused. "Bobby, who is this guy?" she asked. "Joe Williams, you know, the one who wrote 500 Annies," he replied. She looked me over. "So you're the one who understands women. I expected you to look smarter," she said with a smirk. I gave her a surprising answer. "Clearly you haven't read my book. Trust me, I'm not as smart as you think. I haven't had a good home-cooked meal in almost a year. I'm really in need of this. How about I give you the 100 and treat you to dinner at any restaurant in town? Anywhere? Yes, anywhere. I love it when a man pleads. How about this? I'll share my lunch with you and you can take me to La Frontera for dinner. Deal? Are you joking? A home-cooked lunch and dinner with a lovely woman? Absolutely." I shook her hand and the whole room laughed. I think she was a little embarrassed. She was kind and let me eat most of her food. Her name was Yolanda Maria Garza. She was half Cuban, half Irish. I wondered if she had a strong personality. Over the next few months, I found out she did. Passionate and spirited, she loved fiercely. It was a bit much at times. As we wrapped up our lunch, she asked me to make the dinner reservations as early as possible so she could get home to her kids at a decent time. "You don't have to rush home if it interferes with your family. Your kids should always come first," I said. Her laughter was delightful. "Nice try, but no husband around here. My kids are pretty grown, and I'll call my cousin Becky to watch them." Says it reminds her why she didn't have children. Sometimes being a best-selling author has its perks. After some effort, I managed to get a dinner reservation for 7. Rick Bayless, the famous chef, wanted to meet me. Maria finished work at 5:30 and asked me to pick her up at 6. We arrived a bit early, and to our surprise, we were seated right away. She decided not to have a drink before dinner, saying she wanted to enjoy the flavors of the meal. I chose a Victoria, a Mexican beer I liked almost as much as Shiner Bock. While she looked over the menu, she asked, "What should we order?" "I'm getting the Mexican-style barbecue. Order what you like. If you have any ideas, I'm open to them." Just then, Rick Bayless came over to greet us. I had brought an autographed book for his wife and another one for his daughter. Rick and Maria chatted in Spanish about food. I didn't catch everything, but I enjoyed the atmosphere. I can't recall all the dishes we tried, but everything tasted wonderful. I ate so much I didn't want to move. Maria ate heartily too, and I jokingly said she must work out a lot to stay in shape. I have a great exercise routine. I chase after 4 teenagers and also have a full-time job when I can. "You're old enough to have teenagers? Seriously, were you a child bride?" Her smile lit up the room. You're either very kind or just don't know about women. I'm 46. Wow, I thought she was in her late 30s. She showed me pictures of her kids. 2 boys, 16 and 14, and twin girls, 13. I shared a picture of my little one too, and we both agreed that family is wonderful. Before I knew it, dinner was over. I took her back to the station. She lived about an hour from Chicago and mentioned there wasn't much to do in her town. I hadn't felt this happy in years. I definitely felt a connection, at least on my side. I was in town for the next 6 days, and I hoped to see her again. Luck was on my side. Bobby helped me get her cell number with instructions to call her right away. The phone rang twice before she answered and got straight to the point. Dinner at my house tonight at 7. It will be a family meal. All my kids will be there. Bring an overnight bag since the last train leaves at 8. Don't get your hopes too high. I booked a nice motel room for you. Just don't miss that train. I was ready when she left the office. She greeted me with a warm hug and led me toward the station. She lived in a small town about an hour from Chicago, Grant something or other. Her home was cozy in a nice neighborhood. It had 3 bedrooms, which she needed since the boys shared one room and the girls shared another. I was soon distracted by wonderful smells coming from the kitchen. What's cooking? She and the girls smiled and said, You'll find out in about half an hour. Boys, keep him busy until dinner is ready. The boys didn't say much, but they were friendly enough. They had been watching a baseball game when I arrived, and I suggested they turn it back on. I really enjoy baseball. As an engineer and a chess player, I see baseball as a lot like chess. The manager is like the player, and the team members are the pieces. I shared my idea with the boys, and they quickly agreed. Both were on their high school baseball team. One played in the outfield, and the other was the catcher. We all thought the Cubs and the White Sox were going to have another tough year, and I mentioned that the Braves just didn't feel the same without their leader, Bobby Cox. While we were debating the designated hitter rule, I noticed Maria watching us with a small smile. Boys, it's time for dinner. You can finish your discussion later. We had Cuban pulled pork sandwiches, and they showed me lots of different toppings. I picked a spicy one, but it was manageable. There was fruit salsa and a rice dish with vegetables, shrimp, and chicken. It was one of the best meals I had ever tasted. I tried not to eat too much, but ended up enjoying it all. After the dishes were cleared, I thought the evening was over and I would be shown out. But there was more to come. It was family game night, and in my honor we were playing Scrabble. I spent an hour getting thoroughly beaten. I had no idea there were national championships for Scrabble, but the twins were serious players. Christina and Cassandra had even been to state championships. I felt quite embarrassed. Things got even more fun when they started teasing me. Are you really a writer? You don't seem to know many words. That isn't a real word, is it? Show me in the dictionary. They had a big dictionary on the table for just those kinds of challenges. Apparently, snarful wasn't an actual word. The boys and Maria had stopped playing, enjoying my struggle. Before I knew it, the night was over. It was loud, lively, and filled with warmth. I became quiet on the way back to the motel. Maria noticed something was off. What's wrong? Did you have fun? I know the girls can be tough when they play, but they seem to like you. I shook my head. I loved every moment. Tell those clever girls I want a rematch. I'm going to study so I can do better next time. The reason I got quiet is that I've always wanted a big family. Tonight made me see what I missed. Medical reasons meant we could only have one child. Why didn't you adopt? There are so many kids without families. To put it simply, she didn't want to. I asked her at least 4 times over the years, but she never agreed until it was too late. She didn't respond, but took my hand until we reached the motel. I thanked her for the lovely evening as she walked me to my room. It was my pleasure. You really made a great impression on the kids. They usually take longer to warm up to men. I feel the same way, I replied. We were standing by my door at that moment. I was starting to say goodnight when she gently pulled my head down and kissed me. It was a soft kiss that felt warm and promising. We held it for a moment longer than usual, and when we pulled apart, both of us felt a bit shy. Maria, She placed a finger on my lips. Even that small touch felt special. Shh. Don't ruin the moment with words. I'll come by to pick you up at 7:30. Be ready. With one last quick kiss, she left. So, Joe, was it love at first sight? A friend asked. No, but it was pretty close. Maria brought a fresh sense of joy into my routine. I had various plans for the next few days, so I could only meet Maria for lunch. She often brought us food, but I did take her out to a restaurant she had wanted to try. I always got a lovely kiss at the end of those lunches. Soon, I had to go back on tour. The publishers wanted me to travel in Europe since my book was becoming popular there. I had stops planned in London, Dublin, Edinburgh, Paris, Munich, Rome, Madrid, Istanbul, Moscow, and more cities that were still being arranged. It would be a busy 3 months, and I wasn't thrilled about it. After 2 more weeks of my current schedule, I would have a short break before I had to leave. I called Maria most nights. I thought she might get annoyed, but on nights I didn't call, she reached out to me. One day I dropped by her office unexpectedly for lunch. Her welcome surprised me with how warm it was. Joe, why didn't you tell me you were coming? I would have cooked something. I look a mess today. It's been so busy, she said. I kissed her, hoping to silence her concerns. I missed you too, Maria. How are the kids? Let them know I'm practicing and won't be an easy opponent next time. Oh, they're good. They want to know when you're returning. How long can you stay? I had 3 days off. The kids were on break, and I wanted to spend that time with all of them. Unbeknownst to Maria, she had been assigned to help me as my personal assistant. The management wanted to ensure I was happy. She seemed unsure about it, but I was glad when she smiled. She insisted that I come to her house for the evening. I had already prepared my bag. The girls once again beat me at Scrabble, but they admitted it was a bit tougher than before. We were all gathered around the kitchen table. It's funny how many important moments happen either there or in a car. I had some surprises for them. I took my chance when they asked how long I would be there. I've got 3 days, and your mom will be my personal assistant, which means she'll need to help me out. I also have 6 tickets to the Cubs game tomorrow. They are playing the Braves. Her first job is to find 4 more people to join us. Do you think she can do that? Chaos erupted. She looked at me and the kids with frustration, but eventually agreed. The car ride back to the hotel was quiet. I didn't get a kiss. The next morning was a bit tense. Don't surprise me with my kids again. We don't know if we're going anywhere, and it wouldn't be fair to get them used to you and then have you leave. That happened before when their father left, and it was tough. So if you have any more surprises, please let me know now. I said I was sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I thought it would be nice for us all to have some fun together. I just wanted everyone to be happy. Her smile felt warm, like the first signs of spring. I decided to take a chance. Well, I thought it wouldn't be fair to take the girls to a baseball game without doing something special for them, too. If we're making you watch baseball, it only seems fair to treat them as well. Cassie mentioned she is in the school orchestra, and Tina is in the marching band, so I got tickets to the Chicago Symphony tomorrow night with the famous cellist Yo-Yo Ma. That should balance things out. At first I thought she might be upset again, but she smiled instead. Don't tell them. I'll wait until after the game. I have a feeling you're trying to win over my kids. It will be a hassle driving back and forth, but we will manage. If you have anything else to tell me, say it now. Well, I've thought about the driving and booked a suite at the hotel where I'm staying. This will save us time and give me more chances to spend time with you. She turned the car into a parking lot. I braced for her reaction, but surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as I expected. Joe, how much did this all cost? Cost? I'm not sure. The publishers provided all the tickets, and I reserved the suite. It's probably not as expensive as you think. Oh, and we have Bobby in the car for as long as we need it. Please, money isn't that important to me. Just how much do you have, Joe? I'm not really sure. It changes every time I talk to my accountant. The last time I checked, it was around $3 million, but my agent is close to finalizing a movie deal which could bring in another $5 or $6 million, plus royalties from videos and paperbacks. He thinks I could be worth about $12 to $15 million by this time next year. Please don't tell anyone I shared this with you. The numbers left her speechless for a moment, and then she smiled. All right, but I'm telling you now, I plan to have some needs. I reached out my hand. Deal? She took my hand and pulled me in for a kiss. When she relaxed, she wiped the lipstick off my mouth and said, Deal. Please don't worry about how much this weekend costs. It'll be worth it to me. Let's just enjoy ourselves. And we really did. The kids were thrilled. The boys got ready quickly, but the girls took their time. They chose outfits, then changed their minds a few times. Finally, she said we were leaving in 10 minutes, with or without them. As the days went by, I thought about all the fun moments Annie and I had with AJ and imagined that fun multiplied by 3. That's how much I enjoyed myself. The game was exciting. I sat in the middle with Maria while the boys sat beside me and the girls were beside her. One downside to being somewhat well-known is people often notice you. I was wearing my old Lucky Braves hat among a crowd of Cubs fans. I received plenty of playful teasing. It reached its peak during the 7th inning stretch when we appeared on the big screen and the announcer mentioned my name. He joked about being a bit lost but said I was in good company. I think the crowd was more impressed with how Maria looked in her Cubs jersey. The Cubs lost, 7-4. I didn't brag about it, but I adjusted my hat a little higher. Bobby knew a great Italian restaurant famous for its deep dish pizza. It was a perfect way to end the evening. Maria ordered 2 large pizzas with everything for Bobby to take home. She had already been his friend, but now she was his hero. I told Bobby to sleep in since we probably wouldn't need him before noon the next day. He dropped us off at the hotel. We walked in with Maria on one arm and Cassie on the other, while Tina walked with her brothers. We passed a man with his wife and 2 teenagers. They seemed to be arguing because he pointed us out. "See?" he said loudly. "That's how families should be." We didn't respond, but Maria held my arm a little tighter and the boys walked a bit taller. I received a wonderful goodnight kiss from Maria and friendly pecks on the cheek from the girls. The boys looked unsure, so I gave them a light warning. Today was our day. Tomorrow belongs to the girls. Whatever it is, don't complain. Just go along with it. That left them curious. Maria called me at 8 the next morning. "Get down here. I have 4 kids ready for breakfast and they won't start until you arrive. Don't wait for me. Order room service for us. Sausage, 2 scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, and coffee for me. Let me talk to Cassie." I told Cassie to let the others know they could order whatever they wanted, and their mom wouldn't complain. If she didn't like it, she could talk to me. They ordered a big spread with a bit of everything. The boys were in sweats, the girls were in pajamas, and Maria wore a short gown and a silk robe. I was glad I was sitting down because it could have been quite embarrassing. "I think I might have dressed up too much," I joked. Tina replied, "When you told us we could order anything, we realized we didn't need to get all dressed up. This is how we usually look at breakfast." Maria teased me a bit with a smile. "Well, sweetie, I bet not everyone wants to see you walking around in your pajamas." Cassie jumped in with a laugh. "Oh, I don't know, Mom. I think there is at least one person who wouldn't mind seeing him in his pajamas." Maria nearly choked on her bagel while the girls giggled and the boys grinned. She turned bright red. "That's enough, young lady. What are we doing today?" she asked. I shared the day's plans with the girls. "Do not let your mother change anything. I've got it all planned, just enjoy. And Mom shouldn't see the plans until after the boys leave." I noticed her giving me that tight look. I pulled her onto my lap and said, "Be nice or I might have to find a new assistant. You will have a good time, I promise. If you don't like it, feel free to cancel." They had been reading the note. "No!" they both cried out when I mentioned the option to cancel. "This better be good," she said with a serious face. "Remember what you said about being hard to please?" I replied, getting a fun idea. "You will be so hard to please today that it'll take a rocket mechanic to sort it out. Enjoy!" The girls looked at her, their eyes brightening with laughter when she seemed to relax. "What are you girls doing today?" I asked. "Don't worry about that. We'll find something fun. Now let's enjoy breakfast," I said. As I ate, the laughter and teasing continued around me. The girls would lean in to kiss my cheek and ask me things, driving Maria a little crazy, which I found amusing. The boys got ready, and as we were leaving, I kissed Maria's cheek and wished her a good time. We were staying at a fancy hotel with a lovely spa. The girls enjoyed all the treatments: pedicures, manicures, massages, and facial treatments. Tina took a picture of her mom with a green mask on her face, cucumbers over her eyes, and a towel on her head. I saved it and playfully told her I would share it with anyone who wanted to see a picture of my girlfriend. Maria was not happy about that when she saw it, but I refused to delete the photo. After that, they went to the beauty salon. They were styled and made up until they looked stunning. They left with bags full of makeup and hair products. At 12:30, Bobby took them to one of the most popular tea rooms in Chicago, which was just for women. Next, he took them to an upscale ladies' store in town where I had arranged for each of them to choose 2 dresses, one for casual wear and one formal. They were custom-fitted to look their best, plus foundation garments. The boys and I were not just playing around. First, we visited a nice men's clothing store and had 2 suits each made to fit us, with instructions to have the more formal ones ready by 3. The bill was higher than what I usually spent on clothes in a year, but I had to admit, we all looked great. Afterward, we had lunch at a popular Greek restaurant and then went to Wrigley Field. We didn't stay for the game, but we met most of the team while they practiced batting. The boys took pictures with some players and a few coaches. Miguel, who liked to be called Mickey, caught a few fly balls, and Antonio, or Tony, caught for a couple of the relief pitchers. It's nice to be wealthy and well-known at times. I kept the boys until 5:30. Then we put on our new suits and headed to pick up the girls for dinner. We managed to get haircuts, and the boys had their hair styled, so we looked quite presentable. When we walked in, we all stood still for a moment, just gazing at each other. They were beautiful. Maria had her hair swept up and wore a dark green, sparkling dress that reached just below her knees, with a neckline that caught your attention. The girls' dresses were similar, but they had a modest neckline and a slightly shorter hem. I had a feeling that sleepless nights were ahead when they started dating. We guys all wore matching black suits, each just different enough to show our individual styles. We looked like a handsome group, and I felt proud to be with them. My goodness, Maria, you and the girls look so beautiful. Words can't express it. The boys added their compliments, saying how lovely Maria was and how great the girls looked. They glowed with our praise and told us what a handsome group we were. Before we left, we had one more surprise for the girls. We stopped at a jeweler and bought matching diamond earrings for all 3 of them. The girls received lockets with small diamonds, while Maria got a diamond pendant. They were speechless when we gave them the gifts. Then the tears started, and they had to fix their makeup before we left. When we reached the lobby, people looked our way. I had never felt prouder. Dinner was the same. We caught many glances, and when the girls went to the restroom, another diner asked them if their dad was someone famous. Maria told me about it later. "He's a writer. You might know him. Joe Williams, 500 Annies," Cassie said proudly. Tina added, "Yeah, he was on Today last week." I wondered why we kept getting attention, but no one bothered us. The concert was fantastic. I've never really liked classical music, but the pieces performed that night were amazing. Plans had been made earlier, and when we went backstage, the conductor and Yo-Yo Ma were there to greet us. Cassie even cried. Of course, pictures were taken. The next day, an article appeared in the Sun-Times about the event, featuring a photo of Cassie and Yo-Yo Ma. She framed it. Sunday came, and Maria insisted that we go to church. I was raised a Methodist, so I was unsure what to do, but decided to follow along. We wore our new suits, and the girls wore beautiful new dresses, which were lovely in a modest way. We spent the day relaxing and went to see a movie. The boys wanted an action film, while the girls preferred a romance. I liked both, but I dodged the choice by saying their mother should decide. "Oh no, we've been pampered all weekend. Ask your dad, Joe, what he would like to see." It was a little slip, and there was a brief silence before I replied, "Well, if I get to choose, we'll see both. Let's watch the romance first, and then the action to wake us up. And no junk food, or you'll spoil your dinner." Of course, they got popcorn and drinks anyway, but no candy. Maria held my hand and cuddled during the sad parts. I can't even remember the name of the movie. I could only focus on her. After dinner and a game of Scrabble, it was time for bed. We were all a little sad. They had to go back home, and I had to hit the road. Driving back to my room was a mix of emotions. Being with Maria and her kids reminded me of the things I missed in my life. I loved AJ deeply, but I knew that if I had been given the chance, I could have loved more. I hadn't been in my room for more than 30 minutes when there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Maria came in with a strange look on her face. The kids suggested I come up to say goodnight. They also thought I should stay to say good morning. I wasn't sure how to respond, but she continued talking. "I keep forgetting they're not little anymore. I think Mickey is becoming more grown up. I found something in his room that showed he's become more mature. Even the girls told me to come up. What kind of example am I setting for them?" She looked straight at me and said, "But I wanted to come, really badly. I haven't felt these feelings since I first married their father. I didn't think I would ever feel this way again." Tears filled her eyes. "Please don't hurt me, Joe. Don't hurt them. We deserve happiness, don't we?" I took her in my arms and held her close. "You deserve everything I can give you and the kids. We've only known each other for less than a month, but you're always on my mind. Even when I'm in a hotel room watching something, I think about talking with the boys about it." As I lay in bed, I thought about the quiet evenings and missed the comfort of having someone to share my day with, someone to hold close. The emptiness felt stronger at night, making me wish she were there beside me. My voice cracked as I spoke, feeling emotions rise. She listened quietly, her own expression softening. Her small, gentle smile was something I knew I'd remember forever, like a picture I could recall any time. "I always knew," she said softly. "I knew you were the one when I saw how you cared for my kids." She stood, took my hand, and led me gently to sit beside her. "There's something I want to show you," she said with a warm smile. "Something I got today." She wore a beautiful outfit that highlighted her grace, and as she twirled playfully, she asked, "Think it was a good choice?" I was completely captivated. She looked beautiful, radiating joy and confidence. She laughed, showing me the delicate details of her outfit. She ran her fingers over the label, hinting at its fine craftsmanship. Her warmth and laughter filled the room, and we held each other, cherishing the moment. She seemed relaxed and at ease, and I felt the same, a sense of peace and closeness. We shared a simple, comforting moment, lying together and talking about everything and nothing. The night passed quietly, filled with shared stories and quiet laughter. In those hours, it was clear that this connection was something rare, built on trust and mutual respect. We drifted off, knowing we had found something special. In the early morning, sunlight crept into the room, and we woke slowly, still wrapped in each other's warmth. It was a calm, serene beginning to a day we both knew would bring us closer. Joe held her close, appreciating the warmth and comfort of the quiet moments they shared. As they lay side by side, a soft smile played on her lips. She snuggled closer, taking comfort in his embrace, and he gently brushed a stray hair from her face. They both drifted off to sleep, content and at ease. A few hours later, Joe woke up to find her cuddled against him, resting peacefully. He smiled, feeling a strong sense of connection and peace. They both enjoyed the calm of the early morning, resting together without any hurry. In time, they simply enjoyed each other's presence, finding comfort in these gentle moments. At dawn, she gently roused him with a warm cloth, playfully patting his face to wake him. "Good morning," she said with a soft laugh. Joe returned her smile, feeling the quiet joy of these little morning routines they were building together. Later, as they both began to get ready for the day, they heard the phone ring. It was Cassie, cheerful as always, calling to let them know breakfast was ready downstairs. "If you don't come soon, we might eat everything," she teased over the phone. They shared a laugh and, without any rush, made their way to the shower together, feeling at ease with each other. The morning was lighthearted and full of laughter as they prepared to join Cassie, grateful for the warmth and companionship that filled their lives. We would have played together again, but time moves on quickly for teenagers. I was nervous it might feel strange, but the boys just nodded, and the girls hugged us and greeted us warmly as if we had been gone for a long time. The mood at the train station was heavy. I would be away for 2 weeks. The girls were emotional, hugging and tearing up. Maria was the same. The boys even gave me hugs, which surprised Maria. They had a bit of mist in their eyes, but maybe it was just the dust. I told everyone to keep in touch, but then I learned they didn't have cell phones. She just couldn't afford them. She was living on her salary and her ex-husband's benefits since he had passed away in an accident 5 years ago. It covered the basics but left little extra for fun things. The next day, I received 5 calls. 4 were from kids thanking me for the new phones, and 1 was from an upset mother. She warned me never to do something like that again without asking her first. But by the end of our chat, I managed to smooth things over. "I guess I'll have to keep a close eye on you around the kids, huh?" "Be careful, Joe. Don't spoil them too much." I joked that I hoped to be around long enough to learn from her, and she laughed, saying that was her plan since we first met. They started calling me almost every day. The boys enjoyed having someone to talk to about guy things, and the girls liked having a father figure. They knew I would share anything with their mom if she asked, unless it was a secret. Then I would tell her she had to ask them. One evening, while having dinner with the owner of a bookstore chain, I got 2 calls in a row. "How many kids do you have?" he asked. I replied without thinking. 5, 4 teens, 2 of each, and a grown daughter with a child of her own. "Wow, I bet you enjoy some time away now and then?" "No, I actually dislike it. I wish I were home with them right now." He looked at me with understanding. "I'm happy for you, my friend. It's good to see you find joy again, especially after your first wife." He knew my story. I rarely thought about Annie anymore. It felt like it happened to someone else. The only time she crossed my mind was after talking to AJ. Her mother had never reached out to her since she left. I could understand leaving a partner, but abandoning a child was beyond me. When I got my 2 weeks off, I brought Maria and the kids home with me. I had forgotten how small my house felt until it was filled with kids, but we managed to make it work. The best part of being home was introducing Maria to Jane and Anne. They hit it off right away, heading to Jane's table and leaving me at the bar with Harry. "She's really nice and quite attractive, Joe. I'm glad things are going well for you." Harry was genuine, and I could tell. Yeah, my life has definitely changed, that's for sure. Sometimes I feel really frustrated with Anne and Jane. If it weren't for that night, I wouldn't be traveling around like a lost soul. You made them popular too. Now we have strangers coming in here looking for them, thinking talking to them will solve their problems. Jane almost joked about putting up a sign saying the doctor is in, like in that old cartoon. But she enjoys it, even if she complains a bit. It was strange. My old friends seemed to look at me in awe. It felt like I had done something so unusual that I became someone different. I never really got used to that feeling. My new family, as I now called them, could only stay for a week because school was starting. They were all going to the same high school, and I knew Maria would have a lot to handle. I spent the next week with AJ and her family. I told her about Maria and her kids, showing their pictures on my phone. She was happy for me and wanted to meet them. I promised to introduce her as soon as I returned from my trip to Europe. We hadn't talked about her mother at all, but just before I left, she asked if I was going to try to see her since I would be in Spain. I had thought about it. No, I'm not going to reach out. People will know I'm there. If she wants to talk, she can find me. If not, I don't want to stir up old feelings. This made her sad, but she understood. I don't think she will ever fully get over feeling abandoned. What child could? She made me promise to send her lots of pictures and gifts before she dropped me off. I wasn't a fan of the trip for the most part. I didn't get to see much of the places I visited. I was rushed from interview to event with a tight schedule. I usually had only 2 days off each week. I didn't think much of England, but I really liked Scotland and Ireland. While I was in Scotland, I sent Harry a case of special blended scotch. In Ireland, I found a jeweler and had 7 silver Celtic crosses made, which I sent to Jane, Anne, AJ, Bunny for when she got older, Maria, Cassie, and Tina. Maria had told me about her mother's family background, so I sent everyone kilts in their family colors. I also sent the boys 2 small daggers with their clan's design on silver medallions. Once we figured out our schedules, we called each other as often as we could, which was very frustrating. I worried that being away would make her feelings fade, but she stayed strong. By the 6th week, our goodbyes became, "Love you, see you soon." I felt a rush of joy when Maria said it for the first time without thinking. "Goodbye, honey, I love you." I heard her gasp as she realized what she had said. I didn't hesitate. "I love you too, honey, very much." I thought I heard her crying as she hung up. By the 11th week, I was feeling really lonely and missing everyone a lot. Cassie called me in tears the week before. A boy, a senior, was bothering her. I was glad I was far away. I tried to comfort her as best I could. Then I called her brothers and asked them to keep a closer watch on their sisters. After that, I phoned Maria. She was upset, but I managed to calm her down long enough to check if the kids could handle the situation. I learned the story from Tina. A senior took some books out of his locker and turned to find Tony, Mickey, and Tina waiting for him. They clearly told him to leave Cassie alone. He smirked, and since he was much bigger than the boys, he asked which one would try to stop him first. Tina smiled sweetly. "We all will. It won't be a fair fight. We'll all come after you if needed. Do you understand?" He tried to intimidate them, but then Tina kicked him in a sensitive area. As he lay on the ground in pain, she grabbed his hair to make him look at her. "Do we understand each other?" He nodded. The word spread quickly. If you mess with one Garza, you deal with all of them. Although Maria acted upset, I was sure she felt proud inside. It was 2 weeks before Christmas when I got the news. They had added 9 more cities to my tour. I was really upset. I was supposed to have 10 days with my new family, and now it wouldn't happen. Management soon realized that an upset writer was a problem. I told them I might just go home and they could sue me for breaking the contract if they wanted. I even said I would never discuss the book in public again. I was important to them, helping them move into the mainstream, so they really wanted to keep me happy. We came to an agreement. If I couldn't go home, they would bring my family to me. They called Maria in and told her she had a special assignment that coincided with school holidays. She was furious and threatened to quit until they explained what it involved. She was to fly to Italy with her family to help calm me down. AJ received the same news, and so I found myself at the gate in Rome Airport, waiting for my extended family to arrive. They all flew first class, and when they came through the gate, Maria was holding Bunny, so I knew they had met AJ. They had seen pictures of each other. I was welcomed warmly. Maria was in my arms, crying with joy, while the girls danced around and AJ smiled. I had to kiss all the girls, starting with Bunny and ending with Maria. The guys tried to play it cool, but ended up hugging me too. We were all very, very happy. I had rented a villa, knowing we would need space. I had them with me for 12 days, and Mike, AJ's husband, was flying in on December 23rd. They spent the first day adjusting to the new time zone, while Maria and I tried to make up for almost 3 months apart. They ended up feeling relaxed and refreshed while we were a bit tired. We went to art museums, saw the sights, and did various tourist activities. We had a driver and a minivan available, which was good because none of us wanted to deal with the busy Italian traffic. I learned to close my eyes. The girls wanted to go shopping, and since we were in Italy, it seemed like a good idea. The boys and I decided to skip that and instead rent scooters to explore the countryside. I gave AJ my credit card with no limit and told her not to worry about the costs. It was an early Christmas gift for everyone. I pulled Cassie and Tina aside and made sure they knew they could buy anything they wanted, and Maria couldn't say no. "And if your mom tries to stop you, just remind her she needs to buy things too," I said with a smile. Cassie hugged me and whispered, "Yes, Daddy," before giggling and running off. I didn't realize how much her words affected me. The boys and I had a great time. The Vespas were lightweight and easy to ride. We visited a cheese factory, a winery, and a fruit farm that made homemade jams. Good thing the scooters had storage space because we bought a lot. We had lunch at a farm known for its cured hams, and after enjoying a sandwich, we ordered 3 more too for Maria and 1 for AJ. We returned just after the girls got back. The driver was mumbling something about crazy Americans while he brought their bags into the villa. We helped carry them inside, all of us with our hands full. I wondered how much it would cost to ship everything home. Everyone hugged and kissed as they showed us their new things. The boys and I tried to be interested, but after a while they just sighed. "Men," and put their items away. Maria whispered that she had a few things she wanted to show me later, which made time feel like it was dragging on. I didn't care how much it cost. Designer clothes were worth it. She was a bit upset when I accidentally tore a gown while rushing, but I made it up to her by insisting she buy at least 2 more in different colors. We enjoyed our time together almost every night, and sometimes during the day when we were alone. It wasn't the wild passion of youth, but a deeper love that came with age. Quality is more important than quantity, and there was still plenty of warmth. AJ made sure to take the kids on several trips for Christmas shopping. Maria and I went out to buy presents for the kids. I got a little carried away and wanted to buy everything, but she urged me to slow down. "Let's not go overboard, Joe. It will be tough enough when the girls go back to school in new clothes," she said. Christmas morning was filled with laughter and excitement as everyone tore through wrapping paper. Everyone hugged and admired their gifts. Mike and AJ were speechless when I revealed their final present. First was a college fund for Bunny, set at $150,000. Next was a certified check for $250,000 to help them buy a house. Neither felt secure in their jobs and hadn't purchased anything yet. Mike looked at me and said he couldn't accept the money. I had thought about it a lot and had my answer ready. Mike, if I left you the money, would you take it? He grudgingly admitted he would. Then what's the difference? I have it and want to give it to you. It's just a small part of what I've earned, and I won't miss it at all. If it helps, pretend I'm not here. He finally smiled and said, Damn, I'm gonna miss you. We went to Christmas Mass at the Vatican, led by the Pope himself. Maria was deeply touched. Her faith was important to her. Mike, AJ, and all the kids left on the 27th. The kids were going to stay with them for a few days to give Maria and me some time alone. It was wonderful. For the first 2 days, we hardly got dressed. I found Maria a bit reserved. I wasn't sure if it was because of her upbringing or her past marriage. It seemed her former husband had some worries that held her back. She didn't want to accept certain kinds of affection, which I found puzzling. I decided to help her. From things I had learned, I knew that women want to feel loved and valued, but sometimes they also want to be swept off their feet. It's not about being hurt, but about feeling connected in a strong way. I gave Maria enough wine to make her giggle and encouraged her to let go a bit. I tied her gently to the old iron bed we slept in, using soft scarves for comfort. She could move her legs, but not too much. I massaged her skin and covered her eyes, telling her it would make the experience more exciting. I could tell she was enjoying herself as I slowly made my way around her body. When I got close to a sensitive spot, she stopped me. Joe, no, you know I don't allow that. I leaned in and whispered, You do tonight. Her protests turned into soft sounds as I continued. She moved around as best she could, but I stayed close to her. When she reached her first moment of joy, she cried out. By the second time, she was making soft noises, and by the third, she was pleading. Yes, right there, yes, yes, yes. The last yes was filled with surprise. I set her legs free and moved closer to her. The sounds she was making pushed me to my limit, and I soon followed her lead. After that moment, I held her tightly. When she came back to her senses, I asked if I would need to restrain her next time, and her answer surprised me. No, but would you do it anyway? I love this woman. Just before she left, we were wandering the shopping streets of Rome and found ourselves on Jewelry Row. The displays were lovely, but I wasn't really paying attention. Maria stopped and stared at a display that featured engagement rings and wedding bands. A wistful look crossed her face. I had been thinking about our future for a while, and without any hesitation, I dropped down on my knees right there on the street. I took her hand. Yolanda Maria Garza, I love you with all my heart. Will you marry me? Even with a language barrier, everyone around us understood what was happening. She surprised me. Instead of crying or showing a lot of emotion, she leaned down and gave me a kiss that felt deep and meaningful. My heart's biggest wish is to marry you, Joseph Allen Williams, but I have a condition. I want to wait a year before we marry. We fell in love quickly, and I want to enjoy this feeling for a while before taking the next step. Can you accept that? Absolutely, I could. We went into the store, and she chose the ring she liked. It wasn't the most expensive one, but it was nice. She wore it out of the shop, and I hoped she would keep it on forever. As I shared my story, leaving out any inappropriate parts, Barbara had tears in her eyes. That's such a beautiful story, Joe. I hope you both find happiness together. Me too, Barbara, me too. Joe, do you think writing your book will help you understand her better? Definitely, but not for the reasons you might think. He looked out at the audience. Writing the book was probably one of the silliest things I ever did. It came from a place of pain and was influenced by alcohol. I was feeling pretty buzzed when I thought of it. Women are not simple. They are complex beings with feelings and thoughts. There isn't a one-size-fits-all way to understand them. Let me give you an example that might help. Imagine I wanted to write the best car repair manual ever. It should be simple, right? After all cars need fuel, oil, batteries, and spark plugs. But what works for a small car won't work for a big luxury car at all. Women are like that. They are unique, like snowflakes, and no two are exactly the same. But I can say one thing for sure. I can tell you what every woman in the audience is thinking right now." He paused for effect. "They are thinking, 'This guy is clueless. There's no way he knows what I'm thinking.'" The audience chuckled in agreement. And they're right. No one can truly predict what others will think or feel in any situation. We might have an idea if we know them well, but even that is uncertain. I can tell you this, though. Communication is vital. There's a song from the 80s by Marshall Crenshaw called "Someday, Someway." In it, he sings, "If you can't tell me what is wrong, all I can do is wonder why." That sums it up perfectly. Many men miss a lot of things, and saying, "If you don't know what's wrong, I'm not going to tell you," can lead to big misunderstandings. We often don't know what's wrong. If we did, we would try to fix it. We might not understand emotions as well as you do. So please, give us a chance and let us know what's bothering you. It's not possible for anyone to fully understand all women, but if we spend time together and work at it, we might come to understand a little about the ones we care about. I've learned something important too. You really need to pay attention to what's not being said. Sometimes, the unspoken thoughts are the most crucial. If I had listened a bit more, maybe things with Annie would have turned out differently. Perhaps if she had shared her feelings, we could have made changes. What saddens me the most is that I didn't realize she was unhappy and she never gave me the chance to fix what was wrong. But life goes on. Remember at the start of the interview when I mentioned unexpected outcomes? I am living proof of that. If Annie had stayed, I would likely still be a content engineer, writing my manuals and dreaming of retirement. But she chose to leave, looking for something new. Instead of my quiet life, thanks to a book I wrote, I found myself in the public eye, traveling the world, meeting interesting people, and becoming more successful than I ever imagined. I have a large family and a wonderful wife whom I cherish. Sometimes I wake at night thinking about Annie, but then my lovely wife stirs next to me, and it reminds me of how happy I am. My life is as good as it can be, and I am grateful every day. What I can tell you for sure is that men should listen and women should express their needs. Remember, we think differently. If we make small changes, everything can improve. Good night, and may you all be blessed. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.